mPulse, we take a different approach. We believe health communication should be written by humans for humans. So AI isn't here to replace human thinking. It's here to make it more precise and impactful. So instead of us like having AI generate content, we use it to help answers, who needs to hear this message when we're looking at a population? When is the right time to send it? What content is most likely to resonate with the specific population, and really being able to iterate it with AI in that way.
Hello and welcome to the Dragon Tree Podcast, the show where we talk to great communicators about how they do what they do. I'm your host, Chris Hobson, and today we're speaking with Eden Brownell. Eden serves as Director of Engagement Strategy at mPulse, which is an AI-driven health engagement company that is redefining the way healthcare organizations connect with members and patients. Today, we'll be discussing Eden's background in behavioral science and talking about her interesting work with AI and predictive analytics in the behavioral science space. Eden, it's great speaking with you today.
Thanks, Chris. I am really looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely.
It's going to be great.
Yeah. Well, to start with, why don't you please tell us a little bit about mPulse's mission and your role there?
Yeah, of course. So at mPulse, our mission really is to improve health outcomes by making engagement feel personal, relevant, and easy to act on. Because we all know that healthcare doesn't happen in a vacuum. People are busy, they're overwhelmed, and sometimes they're really skeptical of things that they receive. So instead of just sending messages, we think about how to actually connect with people and support their decision making. So as part of this, we combine behavioral science, predictive analytics, and AI-powered tools to create personalized health journeys. Whether that's guiding someone to complete a cancer screening or refill a prescription or manage a chronic condition. So lots of behaviors that we're trying to tackle here. But as the Director of Engagement Strategy, my team and I focus on the behavioral science behind engagement. So we look at what motivates people, where they encounter barriers when it comes to accessing their care, and how we can design outreach that meets people's needs, not just check a box that a message was sent. Because unfortunately, that can be how a lot of engagement strategies in healthcare work. It's just checking that box, and we really try to go beyond that and help people access their care. So my job is really to make sure that our engagement strategies are not only data-driven, but also deeply human.
Yeah, that's excellent. You've referenced behavioral science a few times now, and you have a background in behavioral science and also, interestingly, theater, which I found very interesting. How did those twin interests inform your career path and lead you to mPulse?
Yeah, it's a very interesting journey, one that comes up most times when I talk about this, but it's definitely not the most traditional path, but I think it gives me a unique perspective on engagement. So I actually started college studying theater. I had a really amazing high school theater teacher where I was learning about, reading Samuel Beckett and Mamet and Pinter, doing all the Shakespeare. It was just a really amazing experience that got me interested in going to college for it. But I realized pretty quickly that I didn't want to just study fictional people. I wanted to understand real human behavior. So I didn't want to do the whole creating stages. I didn't want to act. It was really just I was interested in psychology. So I switched quickly to psychology and sociology and anthropology as my majors in undergrad. And then I went on to get my master's in public health with a focus on behavioral science. I had originally actually thought that I wanted to go into clinical psych. I worked in foster care for about a year, and I loved the kids, but I wanted to adopt every single one of them. So right. I joke all the time that I feel like empathy is my superpower, but also my kryptonite. I like to work on sort of a population health level because sometimes being so close to the problem gets a little hard for me. But with all this, like sort of how does theater play out in this? I think that really the skills from theater still apply every day in what I do. So healthcare engagement isn't just about giving people information. It's about how that information is framed and that making a huge difference. So it's about storytelling, it's about emotion, and making people feel understood. And so that's what we do at mPulse. We craft messages and experiences that don't just inform, but really resonate with people and help them take action on their health.
And I wonder, I think we're kind of right at the beginning of that era of people expecting more tailored care in lots of different ways. They're starting to demand more time with whether it's their primary care physician or whatever physician. And I think this is resonating in what you're saying, that they're actually expecting, they have higher standards maybe now. So it's really interesting. You guys are kind of feeling that. And I wonder if, I always grew up seeing, whether it was in movies or on TV, an actor saying, "What's my motivation?" So were you the person when they didn't know their motivation, they came to you? Was that the idea?
Yes. And that was my favorite part, is sort of like, well, let's look at, let's read the play more. Let's look at how other, actors have played this in other roles, because that's something that's so fascinating over time with theater, is you can have the same exact play, written by Shakespeare, but how many different versions of, sort of like all of his plays have been done. There's so many different renditions of Romeo and Juliet. So I think it's a really interesting part where you're trying to stay true to sort of the original story, but also how do you sort of bring something of yourself to it as well.
Totally. Well, let's jump ahead. That was really interesting to get some grounding in where you come from. So if we could jump ahead a little bit and talk, a little bit more about mPulse. From what I gather, your company works with clients in the healthcare field to develop. So we've already talked about developing that better customer experience. What I'd like to kind of talk about now is that equitable health outcome component that really came through in my research on mPulse. So how does that work in practice?
Yeah. So health equity, equitable outcomes. I think there's so much tied up in that. But a lot of companies talk about meeting people where they are. I think that that's sort of all over the place when it comes to healthcare. But at mPulse, we really try to take that further. We don't just think about where someone is. We want to think about who they are, what they need, and how we can meet them with empathy. So just, for example, if we think of maybe a cancer screening campaign, we're trying to get people to get in for maybe a colon cancer screening or something like that. And so if someone has a history of getting screenings on time, they might just need a simple message with a scheduling link. Those are sort of the proactive folks. But for someone who's never scheduled a screening before, maybe never had a colonoscopy or a mammography, it's their first time, that same message won't work. Maybe they're nervous. Maybe they don't think they're at risk. That's really where the behavioral science comes in. So instead of just nudging them, we want to acknowledge their perspective. So we might send a message that says something like, "Not sure what to expect. Here's a short video explaining the process." And so a lot of what we do at mPulse is also creating really a magical streaming health content that are videos and things like that are similar to like you said, there's so many people that we're competing for attention with these members. And so we're against the TikToks, the Instagrams, the other things that are keeping us all hooked on our phone. And so how do we bring some of that storytelling video aspect to healthcare? And so that's why we really try to, include something like that in a message that can be more mindful, again, of where that member's mindset might be. I think ultimately, we as a company try to recognize that there's a human on the other side of the screen. And that's what sets us apart. We don't just push messages. We want to design engagement that builds trust, confidence, and action.
And we'll talk about the patient portal aspect of what you all do, but just so the audience and for me, my part too, understand a little better, is the product that you all make, it's very dynamic. Is it a platform? Is it a software that somebody can take and plug into whatever platform they may already have? How does that part work, if I can ask?
Yeah, so it's a platform. We do have I have to ask the techies amongst, I know we have all various APIs and things like that, but yeah, it's ultimately a platform, and teams, we either sort of deliver the engagement strategies on behalf of our clients, or we also have sort of a part of the platform where people can actually like use our message send capabilities, but design their own messages. So there's sort of either or. Do you want, sort of our expertise and sort of thoughts behind engagement strategy, or is it something that maybe you already have in-house experts that do that well? So we haven't seen as much of the do it yourself, which is really nice to be able to still sort of iterate on strategies with clients in this space.
That's interesting. So you're flexible when it comes to the client side and the patient side, which is really interesting. So, and you talked a little bit about predictive analytics, which is another kind of dynamic you all are working on right now. And we'll talk about that in a little more depth in a minute. But first, can you talk generally about how you all use AI to create, as you call them, or as the organization calls them, personalized health journeys?
Yeah. So there's a lot of hype around AI in healthcare right now. Lots of hype about AI all over. It's every day. I'm wondering about the robots, but but
Right.
not with it in healthcare and everything. Not all AI driven engagement is created equal, I'll say. So we've seen some organizations try to let AI write their messaging, and the results, I'd say, aren't great. Messages end up really sounding robotic, impersonal, or even confusing. I think AI is making advances all the time. And I think this is where it's really that importance of humans in the loop. So at mPulse, we take a different approach. We believe health communication should be written by humans for humans. So AI isn't here to replace human thinking. It's here to make it more precise and impactful. So instead of us like having AI generate content, we use it to help answers, who needs to hear this message when we're looking at a population? When is the right time to send it? What content is most likely to resonate with this specific population, and really being able to iterate it with AI in that way. For example, if we're supporting people with maybe diabetes, if someone who consistently picks up their medication on time might just get a quick refill reminder. These people, it already looks like, based on their history, they're adherent, they're sort of just need like that, like, good job, keep doing it kind of thing.
Right.
Everyone likes to be sort of like acknowledged also for the effort that they're putting in. But if someone has a history of skipping refills, I'm historically very bad at medication adherence myself, even though I work in it. So there's a lot of those folks out there. We just forget. AI helps us recognize that difference in those two people and select a different approach. So maybe a message that acknowledges the challenge. Managing diabetes isn't easy. Let's take it one step at a time. Do you need help? We're here. So really trying to, again, pull through that empathy in it, but the AI allows us to sort of understand where the people are at a better way and be able to do this at scale. So it's really, again, not just about sending messages. It's about sending the right message to the right person in the right way, making sure that empathy comes through. And I think that's what AI helps us to do, is make sure that we're sending it to the appropriate person.
Yeah, and that's so interesting. You've talked about meeting people where they are a couple of times now, and that keyword empathy, and it's so interesting because I hope you don't mind my saying, but you just launched a newsletter on well, at least LinkedIn is where I found it, Beyond the Nudge, which is a great title for some. I do a newsletter too, so I can recognize a good title.
Perfect.
But it's very effective. And you talk about that in your I think it's your inaugural edition there.
Yes.
About the kind of deceptive title of, or the deceptive wording of meet people where they are, because there's sometimes is that key ingredient missing, which is empathy.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk about your newsletter, a little bit later, but I just wanted to also put that out there. We'll put a link to it in the show notes, and really want to draw people's attention to it because it's really, really well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
those are not easy to do.
Yeah. I was like, I got things to say. I think some people could be interested. Try to get over that imposter syndrome.
Well, we alluded to patient portals a little bit earlier, and I was hoping we could round back and talk, because one of your products is a sort of a patient-friendly patient portal. So, and a lot of people out in the audience will be familiar with these tools, for physician and patient communication. But anyone who's ever used them, a lot of times they can be frustrating to navigate. You're never sure when your physician will respond to a message and so forth. So how is mPulse innovating on that front?
Yeah, so I think it's just like you said. We all have them. We maybe use them. Do we even have all have the apps downloaded? Maybe the experience isn't
Right.
great. So I
Right.
think what we've recognized is portals have the potential to be a great tool, but only if people actually use them, and that's where things often break down. So one of the biggest issues with portals is going to be perceived effort. So even if a system technically works, if it feels difficult to use, people won't engage with it. That's just like true of anything. If the harder you make it seem or actually be, the less likely people are going to follow through. But as soon as you start framing it differently or pulling back some of those extra steps, it's starting to feel easier. So with portals, again, if it feels difficult, they're not going to go on there. So that's why at
Yeah,
mPulse
right.
we really design portals using user experience best practices. All the sort of UX out there, folks know more about this. I know it from sort of the behavioral science aspect, but we use UX best practice and behavioral insights to remove friction and make interactions feel intuitive. So we're really focusing on three main things. How do we simplify navigation? Again, people aren't using it. If it's hard to use, they're not going to use it. So how do we focus there, making it clear, intuitive layout so people don't have to guess where to find things? Because again, you already feel overwhelmed when you're dealing with your healthcare. How do we try to make it simpler? The next is minimizing steps. So reducing the number of clicks and extra screens so users can feel, that they can complete tasks faster. And by actually sort of having that like quicker accomplishment helps them stay engaged. And then sort of proactive nudges. So instead of waiting for people to log in, we send direct links to key features like their ID cards or test results so they don't have to search. The only way you can really ever especially with this, is how do you kind of create a habit out of it? If it's not something that they currently understand what they can use it for, it's never going to become part of their behaviors. So if a lot of people, I don't have my ID card on me like ever, but that's something we text them about. Do you know you can get a digital copy on your like member portal? And that will really drive people in because you've taken a thing. You're not just saying like something very random about, go use your portal with no reason about why. It's really finding some of those key reasons that maybe folks are currently calling into their healthcare, phone line saying, I don't have my ID, da, da, da. What are things like that you can kind of make easier and build in for people? So for us, the goal isn't just to build a portal that functions, it's to create an experience that feels effortless for the user.
Yeah, I wonder if that plays into you talked about effective UX and a recent social media. And forgive me if this is, I'm just unsure about the naming conventions you all use. So stop me if this is what you were just talking about. But in a recent social media post, you are talking about mPulse has really made a commitment to advancing health experience and insights, or HXI,
Yep.
which is a new standard for digital health engagement. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you were just talking about, but I'd never actually heard that term before. So if it's, if that's sort of, related but a separate concept, I was wondering if you could talk about how that affects how clients interact with patients through your platform.
Yeah. HXI is our new sort of where we're taking engagement. So that health
Right.
experience and insights, and it's really how we think about healthcare engagement beyond sort of again that current did the person receive a message and did they take an action? How do we go beyond and really think about what the behaviors are sort of beyond it versus just like, oh, message was delivered, yes or no, or
Right.
they engage, yes or no. It's so open. How do we get a lot more specific? So too often healthcare communications focus only on compliance. Did they schedule their screening? Did they refill their prescription? Did they complete their wellness visit? And while those are important measures, they sort of go along with everything we're working towards with HEDIS and STAR measures and everything that you have to, do with Medicare and Medicaid, but they really miss the bigger picture. For these members, with all those things of screenings, prescriptions, visits, what was their experience? Did they feel heard? Did they trust the message? Would they take action again in the future? Maybe we got them in, but maybe they like hated how we communicated with them about it, or, they opt out during the process, or maybe they hated their experience with their doctor, and need a new one. So it's how do we think about these in way more depth than some of the current stuff is. So HXI is about combining data-driven insights with meaningful human interactions. So we look at both what works, those engagement rates, that behavior change, and why it works. So member sentiment, trust, barriers overcome. And through the abilities of sort of predictive analytics, which are way smarter than me, we're able to sort of pull out patterns in these ways. So for example, if a health plan sees high engagement in a program, but members report feeling overwhelmed by too many messages, that's not a successful engagement strategy. True success when it comes to it is going to mean behavior change that feels empowering, not exhausting. And I think I got to just repeat that: empowering, not exhausting. Your healthcare is already exhausting. How do you empower people to do something that's exhausting is really the difference here. So with HXI, we're constantly optimizing what we're doing, how we're sort of thinking about it, so that we can ensure our outreach isn't just effective in the short term, but it's building long-term trust and engagement with healthcare, which at its current state is at a real all-time low. People don't trust healthcare. And so we're really trying to focus on that, and with the sort of vision of HXI.
I think we found the name of your next your second newsletter is empowering, not exhausting.
Yes.
Right?
I think we need like a t-shirt with that on it.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh. We need like a whole campaign. Exactly. Nationwide campaign. I think what you guys are grappling with there at mPulse is what so much of healthcare is grappling with, which is, process measures versus outcomes measures. And it sounds like you've got the process stuff down, pat. And now it's like you're turning your attention to the outcomes. And I think a lot of, this is just a personal theory of mine, but I think the reason there's historically been so much pushback against outcomes measures is because that's a little bit out of the physician's control or the healthcare. That's almost like that has to come from within the patient. Like
right.
Because everyone's standards are different of what is success when it comes to healthcare encounters. And so that maybe that gets a little bit intimidating for some people.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you've jumped in with both feet and you're really engaging with it directly.
We're in there.
You're right in the fight.
Yes.
That's good. Well, we've talked about, again, predictive analytics a few times now, and you talked about, you just spoke about how that helps you extract maybe patterns or things that maybe the human eye doesn't catch. But I just wonder, that is becoming a term that I do hear more and more these days for maybe people in the audience who haven't maybe even heard of it. I was wondering if you could maybe give what your favorite definition is of predictive analytics, and kind of talk about what it is.
Yeah, it is a big one. Even when I'm like trying to it just sounds so fancy. Oh, you do predictive analytics.
It is.
I'm going to try to do like human speak, because I always try to think of how do we break that down a little bit. So predictive analytics to me is about anticipating what's likely to happen next based on patterns in past behavior. So we see this in everyday life when Netflix recommends a show based on what you've watched. So in healthcare, we use predictive analytics to identify which members are at risk of missing important health actions. Things like we sort of mentioned before, like skipping a medication refill or not scheduling a preventative screening. So we're trying to identify members that are at risk so we can intervene before it becomes a problem. So it's not just about looking at past actions, but about understanding behavior patterns and using that insight to guide engagement in a more proactive and personalized way.
And that is something that already is happening on the platform, right?
Yes.
Like you do a fair amount of predictive analytics. How do you, approach your position from a communications perspective, and if there is a method behind what you do, how do you cut through the noise? I think is how you characterized it earlier. How do you go about cutting through the noise so effectively on social media, and kind of what are your plans for the newsletter in particular?
Yeah. So I'll have to be honest. With LinkedIn, it was like, it had never been my intention to like become a thought leader or anything like that. So I think that that's only important because I think it kind of also attaches to like why I started going on. I was looking for community. I was looking to learn. Behavioral science is so niche, and I wanted to connect with others in sort of behavioral science, digital health. Now, really interested in AI and how it's sort of messing in that whole realm and everything like that. But I started just like out of curiosity and being able to learn things and then share what I was learning. So I think where I had success was that other people had those same curiosities and also were wondering about the same things. And so it was really, I think the success is like, I don't, my LinkedIn isn't work. It's something like it's topics I'm really passionate about. It's things that I really love. And so I think that that's some of that authentic, sort of passion that I like have too much of for this, just kind of comes through my posts. And I think that that's, something I think really like good creators on LinkedIn have. And it's sort of where
Definitely.
the whole like maybe AI can't do this for you of like, how do you show up sort of like authentically and not sound robotic and, be able to share a mix of things. I've shared recently things even about like my personal sort of life and everything like that. And I think it's just like, yeah, that really like authentic aspect of like, hey, I'm a person, you're a person, we're navigating all this. And I think it's, again, like it's somewhere where my empathy really comes through of, I'm not going to be a gatekeeper of knowledge. I want,
Right.
if there are things that I am learning that I think can help others in this sort of public health space, healthcare, people, world, humans, I want to help. So I think it's just become a platform where I can really share things that have worked, and that will hopefully go on to help others. And LinkedIn, and then the newsletter. The newsletter was actually inspired by this talk. I think that as I was noodling on some of what we, maybe we're going to discuss and things like that, and based on our previous conversation, I just realized that I think there's sort of a gap here in how healthcare engagement is. I don't think there's enough behavioral science out there being applied to healthcare engagement, and so I kind of, how do we go deeper on some of those topics? And I kind of just was like, I'll just put it out there. And so far we're growing, but it was really just like why not kind of deal.
For sure. Well, there's two things that really have come through, in what you say. Like you recently, one post that I really gravitated to is you talking about your journey just through the healthcare system, and I'll leave it at that. People can go and see it in more detail. But and I think it speaks to like one pattern I see among really effective thought leaders online is that you don't make any bones about the fact that like, look, this is my job and I don't even 100% know how to navigate the system. So you have a certain amount of humbleness about it, which I think is really good. And I just think you have a tendency to publish fairly often. I see you popping up in my feed, and that's something I've noticed about other thought leaders that I really follow is the consistency.
Yes.
So the authenticity and the sort of like ironic, I'm not necessarily an expert on every fine-grained thing. Mm-hmm. I think that lends you even more credibility among people nowadays as a thought leader, and just that consistency. If I were to kind of point out two things that might contribute to your success. So, and that's a lesson for everyone watching. If you have any, and I should add, if any, thank you so much for being here today. And if anyone wants to continue this discussion with you, Eden, and really understand how you navigate this space, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, I'd say probably LinkedIn. I'm definitely, like you said, consistent and pretty regular on there. So folks can reach out there if they're interested in more of like what mPulse is doing. Feel free to connect with me. But I'd say LinkedIn is probably where you'll get the quickest reply.
Excellent. Well, we'll put a link to your LinkedIn account in our show notes. Thank you so much, Eden, for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was such a great talk. Thank you for having me.